Interlude 3. Frances Butler as an old woman. I remember that morning. I remember the way Emma said, "Miss Sarah needs me now," as if nothing else in the world mattered except what Sarah needed. I wanted to say, "I need you too," and God knows I did. I was trying so hard to be who Papa wanted me to be, but I was only 9 years old. How could I take my mother's place? I wanted to be everything to Papa that Mama hadn't been, but he loved cards even more than he loved me. He didn't play cards for a long time after the auction. We moved to Philadelphia and lived reasonably well after Papa paid off his gambling debts. Sarah and I went to the finest finishing school. However, slowly, Papa slipped back into the cards, and the next thing we knew, silverware, silver candlesticks, grandmother's jewelry, and the like were taken from the house to pay off all the money he was losing at the card tables of his so-called gentleman friends. Perhaps it is just as well Papa died soon after he resumed his love affair with cards. I am still thankful that he did not have to live to see our country go to war over the slaves. Sarah married a Philadelphia lawyer. I ended up marrying an English minister of all people, a gentleman I met while visiting Mother once. Though English, he shared my sentiments about slavery and slaves, and after the war we returned to the Butler plantation. It had always been my dream to restore it to the glory it had enjoyed during my great-grandfather's time. Alas, that was not to be. If the slaves were difficult to manage when they were slaves, they were impossible after the war that set them free. I might have had an easier time of it if it hadn't been for George and Rebecca. I didn't remember them at first, until with great glee they told me they had run off when they learned Papa was planning to sell most of his slaves. Then I recalled Papa mentioning them from time to time and wondering what had happened to them. I'm certain he had no idea that they had survived for all those years. It seems they found a cave, set up house in it, and even had a child. When I asked them what they did for food, they said Mattie and Will had brought food out to them almost every day. I couldn't believe my ears. I thought Mattie and Will were the most faithful slaves we owned. If either of them had still been there, I think I would have run them off the place for being so disloyal. But they had left the place right after the war ended. George told me they went to Kentucky. I wondered why they went there, but didn't care enough to try and find out. George and Rebecca made my life impossible with all their talk about the rights of Negroes. They wanted to vote, and they wanted to be paid wages, and they wanted schools and hospitals. Arthur, my husband, and I had no tolerance for Negroes, thinking they were equal of whites, and after a few years we sold the plantation and said good riddance. I don't know why I still remember that morning, but I think about it sometimes. Maybe I'd never felt like I needed anybody the way I felt I needed Emma that morning. Even though Sarah was sitting in her lap, I went over and stood next to the rocking chair. Somehow, Emma found space for me. She wasn't a big girl, but that morning her lap seemed plenty big. She put an arm around me and hugged me as tightly as she was hugging Sarah. We rocked back and forth in the chair while the rain slammed against the roof and the windows as if it was trying to break in. Sometimes I think I could have stayed like that for the rest of my life. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly we heard Papa calling up the stairs that it was time to go. Emma hurried and got up dressed and took us down and left us standing by the front door while she went back to the kitchen. I don't know why, but I wanted to cry.